Couldn't leave the area and couldn't knowingly go within 100 feet of someone with a criminal record. He couldn't do drugs, and he couldn't own or carry a weapon. The hydraulic rams came to life, and the metal door opened, revealing the outside world to Rogers for the first time in a decade. He stepped across the threshold as the older guard said, "Good luck, and don't let me see you back here." Then the rams were engaged once more, and the massive door shut behind him, with the whisper of fluid-charged machinery coming to rest. As the guards walked back to the cell blocks, the older one muttered, "God help anybody who runs into that son of a bitch." Outside, Rogers drew a slow breath and then let it go, watching the chilly vapor materialize momentarily and then vanish just as quickly. He stood there for a few seconds, getting his bearings. In some ways, it was like being born and slipping out of the womb and seeing a world you didn't know existed a moment before. His gaze went from left to right and right to left, then to the sky. Choppers were not out of the question, he thought. Not for this. Not for him. But there was no one waiting for him. It could be the passage of time. 3 decades. People died. Memories faded. Or it could be that they really thought he was dead. Their mistake. Then he settled on the screwed-up release date. If they were coming, it would be tomorrow. Thank God for stupid court clerks. Following the directions given on his discharge papers, he walked to the bus stop. It was 4 rusted posts with a shingled roof and a wooden seat worn down by decades of people waiting for a ride to somewhere else. While he was waiting, he took the packet of parole materials from his jacket and dumped them in a trash can standing next to the enclosure. He had no intention of attending any parole hearings. He had places to go that were far away from here. He touched the spot on the left side of his head, halfway between the occipital bone and the lambdoid suture. He then traced his finger over the sutural bones to the parietal bones, and finally to the sagittal suture. They were important parts of the skull, protecting significant elements of the brain. He had once thought that what had been added there was a ticking time bomb. Now he simply thought of it as him. He let his hand drop to his side as he watched the bus pull up to the curb. The doors opened and he climbed on, gave his ticket to the driver, and walked to the back. A cascade of smells enveloped him, mostly of the fried food and unwashed bodies variety. Everyone on the bus watched him as he passed. Women's fingers curled more tightly around their purses. Men watched him with defensive looks and fists ready. Children simply stared, wide-eyed. He just had that effect on people, he supposed. He sat in the very rear, where the stench from the lone restroom might have overwhelmed someone who had not smelled far worse. Rogers had smelled far worse. In seats catty-corner across the aisle from him were a man in his 20s and a girl of the same age. The girl was in the aisle seat. Her boyfriend was huge, about 6'6", and all muscle. They had not watched Rogers walk back here, mainly because they had been too busy exploring each other's mouths with their tongues. When the bus pulled off, they separated lips, and the man glanced over the seat at Rogers with hostile eyes. Rogers looked back until the man glanced away. The woman gazed back too, and smiled.
"Did you just get out?"
she asked. Rogers looked down at his clothes. It occurred to him that this must be standard-issue garb for those leaving prison. Perhaps the correctional system ordered the items in bulk, including shoes that were too small so the ex-cons couldn't outrun anybody. And maybe the bus stop was known to folks around here as the prisoner's stop. That would explain the looks he'd been given. Rogers never thought to return her smile, but he did nod in answer to her query.
"How long were you in for?"
In answer, Rogers held up all 10 fingers. She gave him a sympathetic look.
"That's a long time."
She crossed her legs so that one long, slender, and bare limb was thrust out into the aisle, giving him an admirable view of pale skin. They rode for nearly an hour, the distance from the prison to the closest town. All that time, the high-heeled shoe dangled enticingly off the woman's foot. Rogers never once looked away. When they pulled into the bus depot, it was dark. Nearly everyone got off. Rogers was last because he liked it that way.